It's our nervous system responses that give us clues to when the ego is running the show. When I feel that the drop in the pit of my stomach, or the tightening of my chest, or my head gets cloudy with swirling so many thoughts, that's a clue that my ego is running the show. Stop. Take a deep breath. Maybe 5. How am I feeling physically right now? How am I feeling mentally? How am I feeling emotionally? And fill in the blanks, literally fill in the blanks. If you need to write it out, because sometimes my brain is so squirrely, it's like, I'm going to write this down so that I get present. And then just take a couple of breaths where you say to yourself, I'm breathing in. I'm breathing out.
Welcome back into Climbing the Summit podcast, where we explore self-discovery, transformation, and conscious living. I am your host, Danny Cobbin, and today we have an amazing guest on, Brittany Switlick. Brittany is an E-RYT 500 yoga instructor, a certified Baptist yoga facilitator, and the founder of Lotus Yoga School, where she has trained countless students to deepen their practice and integrate yoga beyond the mat. With over 5,000 teaching hours and a profound ability to bridge ancient yoga philosophy with modern personal discovery, she brings a wealth of knowledge to the conversation. She is also the author of Dancing with Our Selves, a practical guide to harness the ego and live on purpose. This book is a powerful tool for understanding the role of ego, breaking free from self-sabotaging patterns, and stepping into a more intentional life. In this episode, we will dive deep into the wisdom behind her book, the transformative power of yoga teacher training, and how we can shift our mindsets to create a lasting change. If you've ever felt stuck in old patterns or wondered how to truly integrate the lessons of yoga into your everyday life, this episode is for you. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's get into it. Getting into the book, Dancing with Ourselves, what had you think, okay, I need to put all of this information into a book and put it out there for other people to get whatever value they can out of?
It was actually in your yoga teacher training. So there's a point, usually weekend 3 of the 6 weekends of a yoga teacher training is when people say, my head is exploding with how much I'm learning about how to do life beyond the yoga poses. Like, everybody shows up to training thinking, I'm going to learn how to make these shapes really well, and I'm going to learn how to play Simon Says, not realizing that yoga is so much more than the shapes. And so it's the mental, emotional concepts that you learn in yoga teacher training that I think it was Elizabeth in your training that was like, okay, but I need my husband to know these things. I need my mom to know these things. I want my best friend to know these things, but they're never going to do a yoga teacher training. So how do I share this information with them? And over the last 9 years of leading yoga teacher trainings, I'm like, well, you could show them this website, or you can give them this book. And it really came clear in your training that it's how I'm delivering it that's landing with particular people.
Okay, yeah.
And it wasn't in that moment that it was like, I need to write a book. But about 3 weeks later, Adam, my husband, sent me a Facebook link to a free event on how to share your message on a broader scale. Mm-hmm. And one of the facilitators of that free workshop was Chandler Bolt, and he runs selfpublishing.com. And he said, if you were to write your book, likely you wouldn't have to do a bunch of research. You wouldn't have to do much. You could lock yourself in a hotel room for a weekend and you could get the first draft done because you just know it. I was like, yep. And then he said, and then once you write the book and you share it with the world, if you were to change one person's life for the better with your message, would it be worth it?
Yeah.
And I was like, yes.
100%.
And then the thought of it being able to impact even more people's lives. The way that I've seen the yoga teacher trainings impact people's lives, it's like, oh, if what I'm doing is landing with people and it's making sense, if that could be possible for even more people, then sign me up.
Yeah. How did you come up with the name Dancing with Ourselves? And then we can get into a little bit of what's in the book.
Originally, I thought it was going to be called What's Your Name?
Ah, okay.
Because so much of the work, the way that I talk about the ego is, right, giving the ego a name.
Yeah.
But it was so interesting in the book writing process that I went through. They were like, don't title it until round 5, like draft 5 of the book is when you title it. You can play with ideas. But I was a dancer from age 5 to 38. And so dancing is a part of me. And I've often gave the metaphor of driving the car. Who's driving the car, you or your ego? But when I was writing the book, I was giving so many examples of which part of you is taking the lead. Is your higher self taking the lead, or is your ego taking the lead? And in partner dancing, like it takes 2 to tango.
Yeah.
That you need one person to be grounded and holding the steady rhythm. And then you also need the flair and the flourish.
Yeah.
So it takes 2, literally takes 2 to tango. And so many people, motivational speakers and inspirational people are being like, I'm going to teach you how to fire the inner critic. And it's just like, no, it's not, our ego's not going anywhere. Yeah. And we need it.
Yeah.
So yeah, as we get into it more about the concepts in the book, we'll go deeper into that, I'm sure. But yeah, dancing with ourselves.
Yeah.
So Our Selves, 2 words. And the editors kept trying to put it back together. I'm like, no, it's 2 words.
Okay.
Because we say ourselves and it's like referencing one, like it's mine, but really it's like, no, there's 2 selves that I'm talking about in the book.
So who is Brandy with an I? Oh, with the heart over the I.
Yeah. Brandy with an I with a heart over the I. That's my ego. Yeah, she's the part of me that's been with me my whole life. And she's the part of me that when I was a kid, she helped keep me safe, helped figure out how to survive in this world. And she's come up with some really good strategies that were helpful when I was a kid. But as an adult, they're a little less helpful. Yeah. And so I gave her a name. My best friend Molly actually helped me name her because I was trying to figure out, there was this self-sabotaging part of me that in a relationship was always pulling me down, but then she wasn't as powerful in these other parts of my life because, yeah. And so giving her a name has allowed me to accept less than stellar qualities about myself because I can just blame it on Brandy. But at the same time, yeah, she's not going anywhere. So how can I use her for good?
Yeah. I remember in our yoga teacher training, whenever this concept first came up, where you were saying, okay, go ahead and name your ego. And I originally had a lot of hesitation to naming my ego because I was thinking to myself, well, isn't that like schizophrenia or isn't that like something like that? And then you see like people like Deion Sanders or The Rock, and they talk about themselves in third person. And it talks a little bit in your book about how when people use third person, they are going for something specific. Would you like to speak a little bit about that and how talking about Brandy is overall helpful in not just your life, but it's helped me as well?
Yeah, I didn't know before starting writing the book that it's actually a thing called Iliism. That I'm spacing on the psychologist's name, but he did a bunch of research that essentially referring to yourself in the third person creates a safe distance. It's a psychological, people use it in therapy. We're going to create some space so that you can accept these behaviors that are things that you're doing. And it's like, once you can see it and accept it, then you can redirect it. Yeah. It overlaps a little bit with parts work, internal family systems therapy, where it's like, you have got the manager part, you've got the little part. It's just kind of blending those 2 things together. And then cognitive diffusion, I think is the third one that I talk about in the book, as a way to shift how you're talking about things. Yeah, and I find there are people that are like, no, I will not do this. But then it's interesting, in the last couple of trainings, people have been like, I think my ego is me. I don't know my higher self.
Oh, wow.
Like I'm
Okay.
operating 100% in ego all of the
Oh,
time. And that's been an interesting place to see people have discoveries there. Because I essentially, what I've gotten to that I actually didn't realize before writing the book also is that it's our nervous system responses that give us clues to
okay.
when the ego is running the show. When I feel that pit, the drop in the pit of my stomach,
Mhm.
or the tightening of my chest, or my head gets cloudy with swirling so many thoughts, that's a clue that my ego is running the show. Because when I can breathe with ease, when I'm relaxed, things can be hard, but when I don't have the nervous system reaction, then I can make clearer choices, conscious choices rather than reactions.
Yeah, we talk about that often on this podcast. And there was a day where Danny's teacher called me and was like, "Hey, you need to come get Danny." And I've been having this talk with him about don't put your hands on people. Don't put your hands on people. Don't put your hands on people. Just keep your hands to yourself. Because I remember thinking Dwayne was what I named him back then. I was like, Dwayne, you don't need anything to say about this. And Dwayne's like, no, 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 I ain't got nothing to say right now. It was like, okay, like total silence. I'm on my own. I get there, Miss Elizabeth is like, don't even say anything to him about it today. Like, wait till tomorrow to say anything about it. I haven't told him he was in any trouble, so he just thinks that he's getting to spend some extra time with his dad today. And she was like, but you might tomorrow talk to him about, like, talk to his hands versus talking to him about what his hands are doing. And at the time, I was like, there ain't no way that's going to work. I took it home to Courtney. Courtney's like, nah, it's not going to work. But I had given myself a little separation because of the ego work that we had talked about, and the empowerment dynamic, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. And I was like, I do not want to come from that space. So I guess I'll give it a shot. And whenever I went to give that a shot, it felt weird. Hey, Danny, I know you're a good guy. Your hands, though, we gotta, like, your hands are da 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 da. And we went into it. So, like, I think it was like a day, or maybe it was a couple days, where it was like we're talking to the hands. But after that, he found that separation.
Yeah.
And I think it's so powerful that whether it's something that you intuitively think to do, or whether you're like, all right, well, Danny said or Brittany said, like, let's give this a shot. So just like giving it a shot, giving it a try, and
Yeah.
and then being able to go, Dwayne, I see you, is so powerful. That's why it's one of the reasons why I was so excited to talk to you when the book came out, because you had the book come out. And like, I'm reading the version that you sent me, and I asked you, you were like, the book is out. You can go to Amazon right now and you can pick up the book. And I was like, all right, let me go pick up the book. And I picked up the book, and yeah, ever since, it's just every day opening it up and then seeing how easy it is to read the book, seeing how, like, some books are written on a college level. This one's written in such a way that, like, it's very accessible to me. And then I'm able to, because of the way you wrote it, I've noticed that you have, like, parts in there where we can write down our own individual thoughts, chapter to chapter, or however you got it broken up in there. And that's been fantastic. So if you're out there and this is something you're interested in, I definitely think that Brittany's book is fantastic.
Can I say something about
Yes.
little Danny?
Please.
Because our sons are the same age.
Yeah.
And this is like when the ego, like, they're all ego, right?
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
eat the food, punch the guy, like, time. Like, that's how Freud is like, there's the ego, the super ego, and the id. The id part of the ego that Freud talks about is eat the food, punch the guy, or yell,
Yeah.
or, right? And it's like, at this age, they're 6.5, 7. Like, it's just like, that's not what I want. Roar! Right?
Yes. Yes.
And here we are, I'm 45, and I still have that, but I don't do that because of the way I was trained. But I know plenty of people who still would do that.
Yeah.
It's because they just have never evolved past that point, right? And so it's like, it's still in us. We're still 6.5, 7-year-olds. Our egos are that.
Yeah.
And so it's but what's underneath that is a desire.
Yes.
So whatever Danny was wanting to have happen in that moment, whatever the situation was at school, a kid was saying something, or the kid had a toy he wanted, or whatever, right? His little ego was like, how am I going to get what I want?
Yeah.
And so that's where we can harness it in our adult selves, is like you driving to school. What was it that Dwayne was trying to clue you into that you wanted?
Right.
Think about it in traffic. Car cuts me off in traffic.
Yeah.
Ego, some people's egos throw the bird, yell profanities at the other person, the other driver. My ego is more of the, why can't anybody care about anybody else in the world? Brandy's just like, she sighs dramatically in the car and rolls her eyes. But what is wanted in those scenarios is like, I want to matter. I want me driving on this road to matter just as much as you driving on the road.
Yeah.
So it's like the sigh, the nervous system response is a clue that there's something that I want or something that I need. And instead of letting our 6-year-old version, Brandy or Dwayne, drive the car, it's like, notice, oh, I want us to all be safe drivers. What can I do in this moment? I can't change that other person, but I can slow down and back up or get out of.
Yeah.
Like we can make a conscious choice instead of flying off the handle.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And that you said just a second ago, there's some training that you've been through that really helped you to start to bring things in. Notice that you're in the car. Notice when you're driving versus someone else, another version of you is driving. Mm-hmm. How is the yoga training and that ancient wisdom, how has that kind of informed some of these newer practices that you've learned and been implementing in your life?
Yoga means to yoke, to unite, to come fully right here, right now. Not then, not there, but right here. And so much, we're on the yoga mat, get on the yoga mat, and the teacher's saying something. And the ego either is like, that was wrong. I don't like that.
Every time.
Why did they say that? Or the ego's like, I should be able to do that. Why can't I do that? I should be more bendy. I should be more flexible. The ego's comparing to the people around. Why are they able to do that? Or I'm so much better than that person. Yeah. Depending on our egos, everybody's ego is different. Some go grandiose, some go down below in shame. But yeah, we're on the mat experiencing our ego, but not necessarily realizing it. So, that's where I started, right? The yoga practice on the mat was the gateway drug for me. And then it's like, oh, there's this whole other world of yoga that I didn't realize was there. And it's the Yoga Sutras, it's the Bhagavad Gita, it's all of these books that are over 2,000 years old that are teaching us kind of the same thing as the modern day tools like the drama triangle and the empowerment dynamic. But what I love about bringing the two together is that drama triangle empowerment dynamic is speaking the English that we and with examples of how to use it in daily life.
The meditation, the Yoga Sutras essentially shows you in some ways how to be here now, be where your feet are. And you just brought up the empowerment dynamic and the drama triangle. I would love for you to go into that a little bit and how those two things really point us back to whether it's our higher self or where we are on that. Am I stepping into my ego? Am I fully in Dwayne right now or where I am on that spectrum?
Mm-hmm. So I first learned about the drama triangle. It was developed by Stephen Cartman in the 60s and 70s. He was a psychologist. And basically, the way that my teacher, Baron Baptiste, brought it to us in my first yoga teacher training was anytime that you don't feel powerful or you don't feel at peace, Like you feel powerless, essentially.
Okay. Yeah.
You're likely playing one of three roles in the drama triangle. You're playing the role of victim, persecutor, or rescuer.
Mm-hmm.
And he never said, this is your ego. But since then, I'm like, oh, this is the ego.
This is the ego,
The
yeah.
ego says, woe is me. Why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Victim. The ego says, this shouldn't be this way. You should be better. I should be better. Anytime there's a should, we're being a persecutor either to ourselves or to someone else.
Yeah.
And then the rescuer, which is Brandy's favorite place to be, is, oh, I can help you. I'll fix it for you.
Yeah.
Because I get to be unconsciously better than you.
Oh, I see the switch there.
So it's a little bit persecutory, but it's like, at least I'm not like I'm helping you.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm gonna help you out a little bit here. Yeah.
But that's not a powerful place to be because we're all the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
And nobody wants to be treated less than. Tucker. So Drama Triangle by Stephen Cartman is essentially the ego.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling better than, less than, or judgy. And then the empowerment dynamic, David Emerald and Donna Zajon in the 90s, TED, the empowerment dynamic. And I've done some trainings with them and I sent them the book and they're super excited about the stuff in it. But essentially the opposite of the drama triangle is the empowerment dynamic, and the victim turns into a creator. So instead of woe is me, it's the creator sees as, okay, this is hard, but what am I going to learn from this, or what's possible? It's not free of challenges, but open to learning from the challenges. And shifting from persecutor, you should be doing this, to challenger, the higher self can say with loving compassion, what would be possible if you changed and shifted into this way? Or I notice you're doing this, but not from a place of judgment, but a place of, can we grow from this? And then the rescuer shifts to the coach. And as a higher self, the coach sees everyone as capable. And how can I support you instead of I'll fix it for you?
Yeah. So it's kind of flipping each other on their heads.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any is there anywhere in your life or any examples that you could give us as to where you've seen these two really show up?
All day, every day. Yeah, and Brandy can switch from victim to persecutor to rescuer in the blink of an eye, especially when we wake up and the kid says they're sick and they can't go to school.
Oh.
Like, woe is me. This shouldn't be this way. I should know how to handle this. To let me do some doom scrolling for a second to numb my feelings about how this is going to go.
Yeah.
And then using the tools of yoga, take a deep breath. Acknowledging I feel frustrated, because a creator, the higher self, can feel frustrated. They can feel afraid. They can feel annoyed. It's the resistance to those feelings that put us back down into the ego, into the drama.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, I feel frustrated that my plans for work today are no longer going to happen. And what's possible? Oh, I could actually, maybe this is a day of connection with my kid.
Those are the best days.
Yeah.
The days where you think, okay, I got all this over here planned. I'm going to do this. And then something comes in and it's instantly that woe is me feeling. And I guess it's normal for us to go off the deep end as a human being, but then to find our way back. And so ever since yoga teacher training, ever since I've started to do more meditation, I have noticed that those kind of things will allow me in real time to start to notice whether I am being the coach or if I'm just persecuting someone. And there's this beautiful dynamic with a person when you're really listening, where you get an opportunity to see, oh, this person is not taking me as the coach. They're taking me as a persecutor. Can you speak a little bit to noticing the difference between when you're in the empowerment dynamic versus when you're in the drama triangle?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're pointing to this because you might be coming from the energy of a coach. Like,
Yeah.
I'm here to support you.
Every time. Yeah. At least I think.
And if they're not receiving the coaching, yeah, you've now become the persecutor. So that's where you just have to tiptoe away back.
Okay.
That's where I have to like say, Brandy, I know you can see these possibilities for this person. They're not in a headspace right now to receive it. And if they don't want it, then you are either being a rescuer or a persecutor. So it's trusting that everybody, knowing that they are the creators of their life. And this is what they want to create right now.
Yeah, whether it's an adult or a kid. I think that's fascinating because as we were just talking about with our kids, I think it was the fact that I recognized that everyone has this higher self. Everyone has this inner critic, this ego. And in the Yoga Sutras, it does talk about how if we can purify our ego in such a way that allows us to utilize it for good. And I remember reading that and being like, what does that mean? And then that's where the drama triangle, that's where the empowerment dynamic really spoke English to the situation, and it really made it powerful. So the fact that you are able to put all of these things in a book in such a way that allows us to go in and see ourselves and then see these different tools and these different dynamics. Are there any things that you use in your daily lives that you feel like I've got to do this or else, I might fall off the deep end myself?
Yeah, if I don't meditate, all bets are off. Brandy is running the day. And I don't get, with kids, it's ideally, right, I would wake up before the kids and meditate. My body doesn't work that way, but I do meditate when Vinny goes down for nap. So I know that meditation is coming. But meditation is, basically it's the time for me to sit. And it's a little bit like, our kids need us. They need quality time with us.
Yeah, they do.
It's like our ego needs that too.
Huh. Okay. I have never thought of it like that.
And so I've never thought about it until just this minute.
I love it.
But so sit down for meditation and it's like, what do I do? First thing is right now, physically, I'm feeling a little tight in the chest. Mentally, I'm feeling, pretty clear. Emotionally, I feel happy. Right? When I sit down, it's like, that's my check-in with myself, right? Brandy's the one that feels tight.
Yeah.
And then my higher self is like, it's checking in with all of me.
Yeah.
And then I do the breathing technique and then I do the sit with the mantra and I give Brandy the task of holding on to a mantra, whichever one it is that day, whether it's Soham or something else, or even just the I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. And so it's meditation is 100% the required.
Yeah, the way
I want to lead my life as my higher self.
I love that. What I'm hearing kind of is my car dashboard right now. Like every time I go in reverse, there's like a little yellow, like an exclamation point that goes off. It's like, hey, you need to address this pretty soon. It was a few weeks back where that yellow thing was red.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll just turn the car off and turn it back on. And I didn't even drive to the next parking lot before my car had overheated. And it was like I had to come get a tow truck. And that's what I kind of hear you saying is whenever you go into meditation and you ask yourself these questions, you're able to see what lights are on. You're able to see, is this my tire gauge? Do I need to go put some air in my tire and whatever proverbial sense that means or whatever that is. And that's kind of what I hear you saying. And then you're able to, whether it's turn off that engine light, but you're able to go under the hood of your own self and take a look and see what's true for you in that moment. And that slowing down, I think it's valuable for anybody who's doing anything. So some people are going to say, I can't sit down and meditate for an hour. I can't sit down and meditate for 30 minutes. What do you say to somebody that says something like that?
Stop. Take a deep breath. Maybe 5. How am I feeling physically right now? How am I feeling mentally? How am I feeling emotionally? And fill in the blanks, literally fill in the blanks. If you need to write it out, because sometimes my brain is so squirrely, it's like, I'm going to write this down so that I get present. And then the just take a couple of breaths where you say to yourself, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. It just feels so good.
Yeah. And that doesn't take long at all.
No, that was like less than a minute.
You can do that in the car before you go pick up your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. That's
Yeah.
that's a beautiful tool.
And then see if you can do a few more I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out.
Yeah.
Set a timer for 2 minutes and see if you can say I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out for 2 minutes. And just like incrementally, it's like you don't start training for a marathon by running a marathon. You start by running a mile.
I did that one time. Didn't go well. Hurt my knee. I was like, I used to be in shape. I'm not anymore. But no, it's 100%. You start slow. And that 2 minutes, that little thing that you just said, is so valuable to me. And then what I've noticed is like, if I can gain any space, whether from the reaction, right? Like I'm no longer reacting to what's happened. I'm responding. And if I could just take a breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, and then recognizing that that breath is not about the breath. The breath is nice, don't get me wrong, but it's about that clearing out that mental space that really allows us to dance with ourselves. And I love, like again, like I love the title of the book. So I'm glad that that's what you went with. Is there a specific lesson while writing the book that you took away that like really changed you?
It was so impactful to write out all of the different stories that I've shared in yoga teacher trainings over the years. But in writing out the tiny dancer story, my dance journey, because in teacher training, I talk about my limiting belief that Brandy has held true for me as like a fact about me for my whole life. And I talk about when it really took root when I was 12. And then I talk about it when I realized that it was actually a lie. But in writing out the journey, I had a discovery that about it was when I was dancing in Chicago and I had just moved there out of college. And at the end of that first summer, I auditioned for a scholarship program for Gus Giordano Jazz Dance Chicago. And then I also auditioned for Royal Caribbean Cruise Line.
Yeah.
And I got offered the scholarship. And then I also got offered the Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. And I had always told the story, like I've told the story probably hundreds of times at this point. I've always told the story that I just wanted to keep learning. I love to learn. And so I stayed in Chicago and did the scholarship rather than taking the job. But I saw in writing out the story that that's how powerful Brandy was at that point, that she kept me from that job that was like a dream job because I'm going to get emotional about it. She's like, no, you have to keep trying to be good enough. You have to keep learning to be good enough. When over here, they were like, you're good enough.
Yeah.
It's just like, and no regrets in life, right? But like just to see how, like I hadn't seen how strong of a hold that lie had on me.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's sneaky. Brandy is sneaky like that. She's like, oh no, we're just going to learn some more. You love to learn. And I do love to learn, but like, yeah, just keep moving through it all. But so I think that lesson is just like how strong of a hold the limiting beliefs can be, that they stop us from doing things that are so blatantly amazing.
Yeah. That is so cool
That makes sense.
yeah, no, 100%. Because like, I'm getting emotional because I remember when we did talk about the ego and we started talking about how the ego shows up in our lives. And I remember having a conversation with you about how like I was thinking my ego is always this big personality that steps in whenever I need to like look, I didn't have a bad childhood, but my dad used to spank me. In order for me to stand up to my dad, I had to come into this different like perspective, and I didn't really like being there, and I didn't know that that was my ego at the time that was showing up, and it was really doing the thing. He's like, "Hey, Danny, I got this. Don't worry about it." And our egos step up in such a way like that. But then to recognize that, I remember it was third grade, and I had a teacher that was like, "Oh yeah, Danny's never gonna learn. Danny's not smart. Whatever the thing actually was. I'm pretty sure that's not what she said. But that's how I internalized it. And then you told me, you were like, yeah, sometimes your ego doesn't always want to prove that person right. It just wants to be right. And that was super impactful because I was like, oh, like my ego wants to be right about who I am as a person. And that's limiting me from actually stepping into that higher self. So when you were saying earlier, you were saying that some of the people in your class have really started to say, oh, well, I am always coming from my ego. What is something that somebody that feels like they're always coming from their ego, that they don't know anything other than that? What is something that you would say to them, or is there a practice or anything that you could say to them that might help them move in a direction that to help see their ego a little bit better?
Yeah, all the tools in the book.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. They're good stories too.
Yeah, the journaling exercises in the book, because there's the one with getting to the limiting belief, but actually the letter to the ego.
Oh, yeah, that's like,
That one, just because it's like acknowledging, like, thank you for stepping up and keeping me safe as a kid. Thank you for, yeah, basically, usually it's keeping me safe, and making me feel like I belong. And then what you've cost me is like getting clear on what the ego is like. It's a beautiful formula that Terry Real came up with. And there's other people who have done it too. But yeah, I feel like the letter to the ego is just so, it brings in such a level of compassion, and gratitude, instead of just like, get out of here, stop it. We're not four anymore.
yeah, I think that was like chapter 2 or 3. I literally set down my book, pulled out my pen, and I started writing. And I think you had us write a letter to our ego. Was that on our 300 that we did that?
It was at the very end of your 200 hour.
Okay, all right. Because I think I'm getting a letter in the mail either yesterday or today,
Yeah.
and it just has my name in my handwriting, and I was like, oh man, I want to know what this one is, because
Yeah.
I was like, because I know we've written a few letters to ourselves, but those things are so impactful, from the standpoint of you don't know what you're sitting with when you're writing the letter, and then you come back later on and you've forgotten. I've forgotten everything about what that day was, what we were learning in that part of the training, because there's just so much yumminess in that training. And then, so when I get home and I open that letter up, I'm excited to see what I said to myself. That's gonna be so exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. So if people feel like they're all ego, it's like, yeah, write a letter to yourself. Following that formula is really step one in getting present. And then I just realized, I mean, I was talking with Adam last night about how much time I spend with tension in my chest in a day. And it's just like, because Brandy's like, you have to do all of these things in order to be a good mom, wife, human. And so it's just like, yeah, Brandy is leading a lot of the day. And so that's where it's like, okay, probably more than one meditation in a day is needed, right? To check in and be like, oh, is the world going to end if the dishes don't get done? No. Is the world going to end if you don't respond to that email right now? No. So it's like, just, yeah, it will take work, but mostly it'll just take softening.
I love that. Like, so I was just about to ask you if there's one thing you would want people to take away from the book, what would it be? And I mean, I have taken away softening, a little bit myself, the rigidness around no ego, you're not supposed to take over. But I want to ask you directly if there's any one thing.
Yeah, I want people to finish reading the book with a greater sense of compassion for themselves and how and why they are the way they are, and that it makes sense and that it's okay. And let's shift it. The ego's not something you have to fight. It can be a really amazing dance partner.
Thank you so much, Brittany. This has been amazing. Go get the book. It's good. It's on Amazon right now. I think the audio version's coming out pretty soon. Yeah, I will put in the show notes some links to Brittany's yoga teacher training. She's in the middle of one right now, I think, so you might have to wait a couple months for that. But fantastic. I've been through it. It really does focus a lot on that inner self, that inner work that you do, and being able to step through that, whether it's as a yoga teacher or I don't think everybody in our yoga class isn't a yoga teacher. So even if you're not a yoga teacher, it's a great way to get in contact. It's a great way to get in contact with Brittany and to learn about these things. But either way, go get the book. If you don't have time for a whole 6 months of yoga teacher training, get the book. The book has got it there. Any final words before we get out of here?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Wow, wow, wow. What an insightful conversation with Brittany we were having today. And if today's episode resonated with you at all, be sure to grab a copy of her book, Dancing with Ourselves. It's a game changer. You'll actually find a link in our show notes along with details on her yoga teacher training and other resources. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little more awareness and self-compassion in their life. Thank you for tuning in to Climbing the Summit podcast. And until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep climbing. We'll see you soon.